Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Coding My Way In. And today is a great video because I can finally say that I have fulfilled the requirements for an application to be considered full stack. So now my application has the front end with React and the style with Tailwind. I was able to add routes using the Express.js, and with it I was able to fetch data from my database. So I no longer have to use the JSON file to fetch the data into my application. So without further ado, let me show you guys. So you guys seen it multiple times. It's the same website. Nothing changed other than the way I fetch the data. So as you guys know, in the past, I was fetching the data from this JSON file, and for what it was worth, it was working. But at the end of the day, I wanted to make my application full stack. So I decided to learn Express and Postgres. That way I could transfer all of this data that you guys see here onto my database using PostgreSQL. And I'm not using the main application because, like I told you guys last week, you can actually access your PostgreSQL account through VS Code, and you're able to see the data from your tables. So it wouldn't be something I would use to make any edits. If I was making any deletes or any updates, of course I would use the main application. But for the sake of just seeing data right there, this works perfectly. You're able to see all your vehicles, all your schemas, your tables, and you get the same information. So that's why you don't see me using it, because I'm technically using my database here. So I was able to finally not have to use my JSON file. Why? Because I'm now using Express.js to create routes, and I will talk to you about this in a bit. So here's the bread and butter. So as you can see here, I was able to make a get request. I'm only using get. I'm not using delete, post, or anything, because I didn't want to delete or update anything in my application. All I wanted was have access to my data from my database and be able to access it at any given point. So as you can see here, this route is for all the vehicles, and this one here is to get all the vehicles singularly by ID. But let me show you better that I can tell you. So this is how it looks, which ironically similarly it follows the same structure of my JSON file to an extent. But this actually is better because now, as you can see, I can access all of my vehicles. And you see here, this is the route. Here's the route. And here I have access to all 17 vehicles. And you are able to see, if you see the tables, because that's how I organized everything, you're able to see the features, images, performance, specifications. So images, performance, features, specifications for every vehicle that I have in my database. And if I want to have access, instead of seeing everything, I can just simply reroute. As you can see here, I can just do it based on the ID. What is the ID? This one right here. So if you can see here, I added this portion here. Thus, now let's say I want to see just the Altima vehicle. No problem. I just type Altima. Now I have access to only the Altima, and it has all the details that I need. Let's say I want to see the Rogue. The same thing. And I now have access to just the vehicle, the model Rogue, based on the ID. And again, if I want to get access to everything, I have access to all my vehicles again. And now this is simultaneously happen through Express connecting to my database. And how I did that, and I'll do my best to explain. But but if you guys see that I skipped something or anything, you're more than welcome to reach out to me in the comments. And if you are like learning and trying to apply this into your application, I would be more than happy to tell you, because it was a lot of things. But I did struggle to make this happen. I thought this was going to be the easiest part, but it literally took me the entire week just to be able to figure this out. And eventually, once I did, I saw it was a little bit more straightforward than what I thought. So what I did was, first you have to connect your database, your project with your database. And the way that you do it is you basically follow this protocol, which is here. and you use it through the process.env. And to avoid using process.env, you just import process.env, and that way you don't have to type it over and over. And .env just means the env file. So if you can see here, you see user, host, database, password, import. That's not the name of my files. They actually have real names. But what you do is, one of the protocols for safety in your applications is when you're using connecting with your database and things of that nature, if you have like API keys, passwords, things that you don't want people to see, you put this information into your .env file. As you can see here, you see the user, the host, the database, the password. These are things that you wouldn't want your user to see. So you will put this in an env file, then you just import it here, and then you have access to it. And it works with the get ignore. So just like you type node modules in .env, it works fine. So what does this do? What this does is when you push your code into GitHub, whatever you have here, it won't go to your GitHub repository. So if you see in my application, you'll see that you don't see the .env file, and you also don't see the .env file, so it's not there. But you can see it here. So that's what get ignored helps. But going back to the project, so once I was able to connect the database, here is where I had some issues. So the problem that I was having was, after I created the routes and for the single cars and all of them, the problem that I was having was you have to create a promise and make a pull query, so you can do like a you do a SQL command, as you can see here. But my mistake was I kept writing the SQL command, but I was not putting the schema. So you have to tell the database, you have to tell Express what schema you are trying to reach, because what happens is so you get different schemas. For instance, by default you get the public schema. So what was happening was, since I was not telling the specific schema, which is cars details is what has all of my tables. What was happening was it was looking for images, performance, features, and specifications at the default location, which was public, and I didn't understand, and I couldn't figure it out. And I don't know why I couldn't understand this, because when I was learning SQL, with the crash course that I took, the instructor clearly specified every time that he was trying to get access to a table, he will always access it using and typing the schema first. So it literally slipped for a whole day, but eventually I caught on and learned that I have to specify, just like I'm using just like if I'm doing it using Postgres, because again, you're doing a SQL command, which is what you would do, a SQL query into Postgres. So you select from cars details the schema, images the table, where car ID will be the column. Why is the column? We have it here as proof. You see here, that's a column. That's why you will write the column, because why? We want to find the vehicles by their ID. And this $sign that you guys see here, it's actually done on purpose. So the real car ID is this one, but they put a $sign as a protection to avoid SQL injections, because somebody can type delete and really damage your database. So what it does is you run the query and you see the $sign, but it doesn't run the $sign. The equal is actually the car ID, but what it does is once you push the command, the system sees this and then ignores the $sign, and it jumps straight to what you're actually trying to achieve, which is the car ID. So I did that, and you basically do you do an array, and then you add the table that you're trying to add. So in this case, I'm trying to image, performance, features, specifications. So I pass all this information here, and then the variables that I have here, they just get passed down next to it. and then you make sure you use rows, so you create rows. And then the reason you see an array of 0 is so you can start from the first array. In this case, the first vehicle, which would be Ultima. So that's the reason why there's a zero there. And you proved it. How can I prove this? So if you see, when I go to my express route, you see the first vehicle is Ultima. You see here, my first vehicle is Ultima. If I go all the way down, my last vehicle is Bursa. My last vehicle is Bursa. So that's how it works. So that's why the 0, and we made it into an array. Moving on. Something that you guys really need to be careful. I made that mistake, was that I was using when you use PostgreSQL, you use a port, and the port that I was using was 5432, which is the default for Postgres, the application itself. But what was happening was I was trying to fetch data from this, and I didn't understand that this port was already being used. So I kept having issues and I couldn't log into. So that's when I figured out and learned that I actually had to give a different port in order to make sure I have a port just for fetching the data for the local host. And then this is where CORS comes into play, which is cross-origin resource sharing. And all it does is 2 simple lines of code, this one and this one. And all it does is it helps your application cross-origin. And all it means is web applications, they have this protection that if there's a local host, let's say 3000, and local host 8000, even though it's the same application, since they have different local hosts, it will not let the contact happen. So the CORS, what it does is it tells your application, hey, yes, there's a port being used, local 3000, and another one local 8000. Yes, you're getting a request from 3000. You are allowed to do it. It's okay. So basically that's what CORS does. You can look more into it, but the basic definition of it is that. So once I was able to do that and connect the database, then the next step was I make sure to sorry about that, to really make sure that I fetch the data. And what I did was a mentor of mine taught me that to use a hook instead of leaving all the fetch information doing it from here. He told me no, just use a hook, create a custom hook, and where you do the loading, which all it means, these 2 states, all they do is set as true, like loading the data, meaning it's fetching the data. And as long as you're fetching the data, it's true. But the moment you get the data, it becomes false. Why? Because you already have the data. So the process basically is here the set load is set to be true. Why? Because we are fetching the data from the database. From where? From the local host, from the vehicle route that I showed you in Express, and then it becomes into a JSON file. This becomes the vehicle, and then the set load becomes false. Why? Because we already have the data that we were fetching in the first place. And then we set it on the vehicles, which is now the information that got fetched from here, turned into JSON, passed into vehicles, and then you do it here. And what you do is you create a context, and all the context does is it gives you access so you can pass by wrapping all of your routes. You're able to pass your context, your information. So this hook, I'm able to pass it here, and through the use apps context, I'm able to use it into my application, so I can pass all that information. That way I don't have to prop drill, meaning I don't have to use the app context just helps you a set of data be able to be shared into multiple components without you having to use like a bunch of props. So it helps you to keep things more organized, so you don't have to be prop drilling like this. So use context helps you to keep your code organized, and all you have to make sure is you create a hook, you create this process, you wrap your routes, and you're good to go. And then you are able to use it in your different routes. And then what I did was I just passed everything through a map method. And that's all I got, guys.